Definitely want to introduce this one to the American audience. No impact here in the States whatsoever, but it was a huge record in England. As a matter of fact, she's well known in England. And it's done well in some of the other countries in the world too, but I'll get into all that in just a minute. At number 31 on my fantasy playlist, April 3rd, 2016, Fleur East with Sax. Man, this is just one badass R&B record. This is one of the most satisfying R&B records I've ever heard. You have got elements of hip-hop, R&B, pop. She's badass. I mean, she's got an attitude. This song is loaded with attitude. It's kind of like Uptown Funk. As a matter of fact, to some extent, she was inspired by Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars. Bring back some of that old school jams and some of that guitar, and it's almost that funk guitar. It reminds me a little bit of Bootsy Collins. Reminds me a little bit of James Brown back in the day. Now, here's the musical DNA of this record. I'll give it to you right now. Beyonce, Rihanna, Salt and Pepper. That's where that hard charged attitude comes in. Salt and Pepper, and Vogue. Never ever gonna get it by En Vogue. Still got that funk guitar in that song too by En Vogue, which came out in 1992. Nicki Minaj comes to mind. I'm thinking maybe a little bit of Lil' Kim and Foxy Brown from back in the day. That's right. And of course, going way back to the days of Betty Wright, R&B star Betty Wright, Clean Up Woman, one of her hits back in 1971. Got that attitude. Now, she's had some low points in her life. Now, she appeared in the X Factor back in 2005 in the second series of the X Factor in England. And she was in a group called Addictive Ladies. 2014, she reappeared in the X Factor, the 11th series rather, as a solo artist. But before that, she hit a lull. She was very depressed, borrowed a lot of money from her parents, worked as a waitress and as a fitness model, and she felt so down, she really struggled with her singing career. It's over. It's done. I'm on the ropes. Just hit a low. Hit a trough, a major trough. But then her friends, her family came behind her. They said, let's go for it. Go for it. Let's do the X Factor. She appeared on the X Factor. She was a runner-up. The 11th series of the X Factor, 2014, mentored by Simon Cowell. As a matter of fact, after she was a runner-up with the X Factor, she got a deal with Simon Cowell's record company called Psycho. I believe it's called Psycho. It's SYCO or Psycho or Psycho Music, which is, I believe it's owned by Sony. It's a big record label. Got that deal in 2015, and she went between London and Los Angeles to work on this album, and inspired by Uptown Funk. As a matter of fact, she did Uptown Funk, I believe, on the X Factor 2014 before the song was even released by Bruno Mars and Mark Ronson. And her version of that song went to #1 on the UK. Oh gosh, I can't read my ticket scratch. It wasn't on the UK singles chart. It was another chart that it went to #1 on. And then the version by Mark Ronson and what's his name? Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars came out. And of course, that was a big hit all over the world. But her time was coming. The album, her debut album, was called Love, Sax, and Flashbacks. Flashbacks. And Sax came off. First single debuted at #3 on the British singles charts. Went to #3 in England. Got great sax in there. That sax reminds me a little bit of Living in America by James Brown. You see, you got that musical DNA, possibly even going back to the 60s. But definitely the 80s and the 90s got the greats to Beyonce, as I've already mentioned. Song went to #3 in England, top 5 in Ireland, Scotland, went to #1 in Belgium. Its chart success was rather scattered. Went to didn't make top 40 in France and Germany, but did well in Hungary. Hungary. Have a hard time pronouncing that country's name. And but here in the States, I just want to introduce this song to the American audience for the first time. probably the first time the Americans heard this record off my YouTube. Yes, that'd make my day right there. If I could make this song a hit over here in the States. Because believe me, it deserves it. Now think about this. This song, it could be played on R&B stations. This is a hip hop record. It could be played on the rhythmic stations, the pop stations. Ryan Seacrest could play this record on his show. It's got all the ingredients. She's bad. She's a bad mama jamma. That's right, Fleur East from England, from London. She's coming in at number 31, down from 22, but don't be fooled by that. Dropping on my fantasy playlist of April 3rd, 2016. But I guarantee you, it made it a number 1 on my fantasy playlist. Because I'm going to tell you something. This record is a number 1. Remember that. Fleur East. I'm getting too excited. Like that Pointer Sisters record, I'm so excited. Hear a little bit of the Pointer Sisters in this record too. Fleur East with Sax at number 31 on my fantasy playlist back in April 3rd, 2016.